This is the third section of my conversation with Preti Taneja on her book Aftermath. In this section, Preti gives her recommendations on other books that address issues such as incarceration, feminism, and structural equality, all issues that are central to her own work. Please let us know in the comments if you read any of these, what you thought about them, or if you have any recommendations of your own. Welcome to the third part of my discussion with Preti Taneja on her book Aftermath. If you didn't catch parts 1 and 2, please do watch those first. In this section, Preti will give her recommendations for similar or related texts. So, yeah, have you got anything that you think would be of interest to people who have read Aftermath and, any of the issues you address in that book?
Yeah, sure. So one of the books that really helped me to unlock how I was going to go about what I wanted to do, and also whether or not it was viable to do writing about this event, was this wonderful book by Maria Tumarkin, and it's called Axiomatic. I don't know if you can see that right there.
Yes, coming up well, thanks.
It's such an extraordinary piece of writing, and it's really about collective trauma and collective grief after events which shape communities. So school shootings and or a child goes missing in a community and things like this. And really about this idea of, how these events long term affect people, and what kind of ways in which they come out of our bodies and make us act in certain ways when we've experienced those kinds of violences or traumatic events. And it's because it just deals with case after case. um, it really thinks about the links between individual, collective, and structural trauma, and such beautiful writing. Very important book to me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Another one I have on my pile here. So Aftermath really is very intertextual with a lot of poetry. So the key poem for the text is Diving into the Wreck, the Adrienne Rich poem, which is about feminism and feminist reckoning with the past. But because of the way the language works, it's open enough for it to really speak to what I was writing about, the idea of going into the depths of something and facing off against a monster that was sort of a bit like myself, enough for me to feel like I was sort of swimming around this wreck of trauma, memory, and violence, and really trying to excavate something honest about what that was like. So highly recommend. Collected Poems of Adrienne Rich, introduced by Claudia Rankine, whose book Citizen is obviously another very important text for anyone thinking about racial violence and structures and microaggressions, and how to write about those things in extremely well-honed lyrical prose. Anyone, so any of the books that sort of fall into those categories of poetry, again, Wendy Trevino's Cruel Fiction, which I have here as well. She's a really wonderful poet, political thinker. Sometimes, with poetry, it doesn't have to be exactly about the thing that you're thinking about. That's the beauty of it. The way it makes our brains work in sideways slides and angles, and
Yeah.
plunges us into these experiences can really be really great to think about complex things. And then if 3 books I think are really important to mention, which anyone who is working on criminal justice or abolition will know. Mariame Kaba's We Do This Till We Free Us, which she's an American Chicago-based abolitionist. It's All About Love, or All About Love, Bell Hooks, thinking about bodies, patriarchy, how to be a lovable and loving person in community. And Sarah Ahmed's Living a Feminist Life, which is obviously kind of the canon and the canonical text for anyone doing truth telling to power in important feminist ways, or who just needs a little respite from thinking they're going crazy in a mad system. Um, yeah, I think, and Aftermath itself contains all the references that I used. So if there's a huge index of stuff in there from
Yeah.
say Philip's song, another incredible piece of aesthetic, political um, writing about slavery and the legacies of slavery. Yeah, I think that's quite a lot of books.
It is. I think that's
Oh yeah, I forgot one. I did forget
oh,
one.
okay, go on.
So this is one I mentioned when we were talking, by Aaron Kanani, and it's called "The Muslims Are Coming: Islamophobia, Extremism, and the Domestic War on Terror." And it really traces how 9/11 impacted the narrative on Islamophobia and made it sort of globally acceptable, and especially in the West, and the implications of that and surveillance culture, and what's happened since then. It's an essential book.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great selection, and I think plenty to keep people going who are interested in getting deeper into many of these issues. And yes, as you said, Aftermath, and as we mentioned at the beginning, with the sort of generic mixture, you do reference all of the works you cite. So reading Aftermath itself takes the reader into those other places as well. Well, thank you so much for your suggestions, and thank you for a great interview and for talking so candidly about Aftermath. Very, very important book, and I do hope people listening and watching will read it. So thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you, Ivan.
You're very welcome.